Hello there. We are live. Let's see here. Got our camera going. Got a weird outfit going today. So we've got our blank Rhino model. Let's pick up this stream where we left off last. Thanks for tuning in. We are working on a case study here for an Apple Vision Pro activation, which for whatever reason is not showing up in my recent files. There it is. Okay, and we're really focusing in today on creating sheets. So we had seen this a little bit. I had just gone in here today. I meant to do a post, didn't end up happening. But if we see here, I use snapshots in Rhino to kind of explode this, which is fine because using snapshots, you can always revert to a different version. So I have my little snapshots window here. I can drop that into the bottom right. And I can go back to my original piece here. Current state might not be saved. It is though. I can see it there. Do I want to save a snapshot first? No. I'll just transfer and everything just gets squished in. Cool. And there's our little pop-up activation. So yeah, the point of the stream is just to kind of start setting up our sheet layouts so that we can continue to modify, work on this model according to however we want to develop it for drawings, right? For presenting. It's a schematic. It's not something that someone is going to go make based off of these drawings or based off of these files. A schematic, typically you use to lay out different parts, be able to get a cost estimate on what it's going to take to make it happen. Feasibility as well is a big factor. So yeah, let's get right into it. So in order to start doing our sheets, we're going to actually change our workspace in Rhino a little bit. I'll first type in the command layout, and there we go. Hi there, EM. See you there in the chat. If anybody in the chat wants to ask questions as we go through this process or give any suggestions or let me know if anything's going wrong with the stream, I highly appreciate that. So I just hit layouts and now it's prompting me to do a new layout because I have no layouts. So we're gonna do Rhino PDF. I just find that it works best. Adobe PDF kind of messes up line weights quite a bit and all the other ones, whatever. I'm just gonna have it set to print on Rhino PDF. It's the most accurate from what we see within Rhino to what gets outputted as a PDF. 11 by 17 is my favorite format when it comes to do sheets, although honestly, and I do this a lot at work, we do a lot of printed drawings and printed documents, and it's pretty frustrating to me because, I mean, although as a graphics person or graphic designer, you have to know how to work in print, how to work in digital, I find that most of the time when I end up working for print, it gets shown mostly in digital anyway. So it's like, anyway, we'll go with 11 by 17, but I just had to vent a little bit there that like print is almost dead unless you're like really catering to print. So boom, there we go. We have an 11 by 17 sheet. Now, how does this work? So we have what's called a detail view, which is this rectangle that just highlights orange right here. There we go. I'm back for whatever reason. My screen stopped showing. So this little rectangle is our detail, and it's purple because it's on our schematic layer. I'm going to switch it over to layer 4, and I'm just going to call this 99 is typically what I go to for things that are specific to layout, just because that stacks all my layout layers towards the bottom. So I'll do 99 details. And a detail is just any little window in a sheet, right, that allows us to look into the model. So how this works, let me move the detail over into that new layer. So go to properties and just shift the layer right here in properties to detail. Now it's green. So it shows up here at the bottom. We see we have perspective, top view, front view, right. If I click on perspective, we go to our perspective view. And as we typically do, if I double click on perspective, we get our 4-view default mode right here, where we have it the front, we have it for the right side, we have it for the top, and we have a perspective. And we're going to set the same view up, except we're going to do it on the sheet. So if we go to page 1 right here, boom. I also want to bring up my layout panel just because it helps. So I'll go to panels and I'll click on layouts. And then here I can modify or organize all my layouts as I did my snapshots. So here's my layouts. We have page 1. I'm going to double click in here and I'm going to call it, you know what? We should always first start with a cover page. So for our cover page, we're going to set up like a money shot, right? For this whole design piece. So I will double click into the detail just by double clicking anywhere inside its rectangle. And now I can see, like, by holding right click, I can pan around. That's because I'm in a top view. So similarly to our regular viewport, I'd go to the top left here and I can switch it to a perspective view. So set view, perspective. Cool, now we have our perspective. However, it's in wireframe. So I'm gonna select this down again and select whatever display mode we want to use. So I have my own proprietary ones. So I'll do line mode shaded. So that's pretty neat. I don't like the shadow the way it's casted right now. So I'll just double click here and enter empty space so that I'm outside of that detail now. And I can type in sun, and that brings up this little window. And I can modify, well, first you want to enable your sun if it's not enabled. So you get those shadows. And again, I have hard shadows because I specified that with my display mode. And I'm just going to manually move the sun's position to create the type of shadow that I want. And this is kind of what I want right there, because if I rotate around it now, you can kind of get a little bit of a better sense of the shape that this thing has. So for a money shot, I'm actually going to do 2. I'm going to do a front, so kind of like this. And I'll select the detail, select this middle point here, do the move command, move enter, or move spacebar. And then I'm going to use this top right corner to move this whole edge and snap it to the middle. So that is the thing about details, is like, even though I'm moving the center point, it moves the entire edge. I believe, let's see, if I move the corner, it just moves the whole edge. Yeah. So details are kind of locked in to just being rectangular in shape, which is fine because you can overlay several. So I can copy this and just have another detail over it. And it could be over here, you know, just to make the most out of the page. But I'll go ahead and sit this side by side. And what I wanted to do was just rotate this so that we get the other side of it. Now I want these to match. So in order to match, the best way to do that is to not have it be a perspective. So I'll go to set view and I'm going to set it to a southeast isometric. Exit out of that. And also what I'll do is I'll select everything here and I'll do zoom and then S enter. So it just zooms in on the whole object and fits it within the viewport. Now, within the detail still, I'd go into properties right here on the right, and we actually have a scale. So the scale for our model here is like 4 feet something, whatever. I just want to make it like 5 feet evenly. And then I can continue to change that. I want to fit the shadow within the view. So I'll try 7 feet. There we go. That's nice. So basically we can just use those commands, like set it to an isometric view, zoom on the selected objects, and then change the scale of the view without moving it around so that we have our object perfectly centered in the detail at a consistent scale and an isometric. So I did southeast there, so I would do northwest here. So again, just to repeat that process, we do set view, isometric, northwest, select everything in view, do zoom, S, try that again. What's going on? Zoom, S. Oh, I guess it's already there. Okay. And I did 7 feet, did I? There we go. So now these two views are perfectly matched with the same lighting, just looking at different sides. I have my ground plane on, which is why I have a little bit of a horizon line. Not gonna concern myself too much with that at the moment. We can add in a text object, or just not a text object actually. There's a difference in Rhino between text and a text object. Text is just text. text object is text in the form of curves, solids, or 3D geometry, or just surfaces. Excuse me. Cool. So we'll do 2024. Let's do 2023 Q4 Apple Vision Pro. It's called the Vision Pro, right? I'm not screwing up the name of it. And then we'll do scale and just scale this up to kind of make up a title. So I'm freezing and trying to scale that text for whatever reason. There we go. So for styling this text, we have a few options to do that. Should be getting into all the nitty gritty, but if I select this text over on the right for properties, I get basically the style that this text is in, the height that it has, whether it's bold or not, what font. So it's an Arial right now. I like myself Montserrat. It's just a go-to for me. And let's just make it a bit neater by underlining it with a polyline. And then we'll extend that line a little bit off to the right. Okay, so we have the detail lines showing up currently, right? But those don't actually print. I'm gonna go over to my layers, and for detail layer, we see that it's actually set to green, but we can actually set a different print color. So for example, right here we have our layout print width and print color. I'll just click here and make that black. So if I go and I do print, and I'm asking to print to PDF, and instead of hitting display color, I hit print color, you see, boom, we changed to black. Or we could do display color, and then we do the green that the layer is in. But you know, if I set it to print color, then I can always control my printing colors and my printing widths for my lines and stuff, all right here in my layers panel. Nice and neat. Cool. So we'll close that out. I'm gonna hit a new page, or what I like to do too is just kind of copy a layout so I can transfer in some information, and then we'll call this one the for view page. All right, cool. So for the four views, let's click there. It's going to be exactly the same if I go between one page and the other with these arrows. There's no difference. So if I go to for view, what I want to do now is I want to select both these detail views, and I'm going to do a scale 1D so that I can scale from the top to the middle point of itself. And find the middle to snap to. Boom. Okay, now I can select both these views and do copy and copy it underneath. All right, now I got my four views. I'm gonna delete this title. And actually, well, this is something that could be prepared on the side. I'm gonna open up an older file, such as, let's see, yeah. This is some old work. Actually, I don't know if I want to use this one because it doesn't have my title block in it. There's no title block at all in it. Let me open up a different one. So I know this one's gonna have one. I think it probably is gonna have a title block I made for a client as well, but that's fine. This one I can show. Give that a second to open up. Okay. Cool. Yeah, I'm just gonna get rid of my client's logo. It's calculating all the sheets at once here, so I'm just hitting. When you have a document that has many pages and you're using technical views on your pages, it takes time for Rhino to actually calculate all those drawings. What I'm doing right now is, as the document is opening and trying to calculate all the drawings, which I don't need it to do because I don't want to see the drawings, I'm just hitting escape. Perhaps even double clicking out of here. There we go. And now I can go to one of my sheets. There we go. And okay, now I can grab my title block, which is right here on the right side. I'm gonna delete, well, yeah, the logo's attached to it, but that's fine. I'm gonna select everything on this title block, do copy, Control C, move over into my new sheet and just do paste, and it just pastes right into place. Delete your current client logo, and we've got a title block. So I'm going to select all these views now and do scale 1D and move or resize this to fit right to the side of that title block. Cool. Now we'll name this project name, so Apple Vision Pro Q4, temporary name. And this is a title block that I created. So if I select the text here, you see it selects this entire thing, right? That's because I made this into a block. So if I were to do explode, it's no longer a block. Now all these things are loose, all these lines in this chart and these texts are all separate. But I want to make that into a block by selecting it all, using the block command to create a block, and then naming it whatever it is you need to name it. The reason why I do that is because, let's say I have a new page, right? So I duplicate this layout. So now it's copied over, and I'll just keep one view here so we can differentiate it. So the thing is, you'll notice that the title for the page and the page number are not part of the block. So I can individually do that for each sheet. I'm sure that there's a smart way to do that as well, where it kind of keeps counting up. Those are things that are getting finessed in Rhino 8. So I'm sort of waiting for Rhino 8 to come out to really dive deep on how it is that they've updated the whole drawing system, because as far as I've seen, Rhino 8 is going to see a huge rework of entirely how pages work, how drawings get generated from 3D models. But this is sort of the general gist of what's consistent. But I'm hoping that page numbers or smart pages numbers like that are going to be easier to use. But we can basically retitle or renumber any page like this. And if I were to change the name of the project, which I did earlier, maybe I undid that, right? We see Tiago, Elena, and Alvaro on both of these. And if I double click and I rename this Apple Vision Pro, let's call it a pop-up. Okay, I move my line out of the way. Now, if I move over to the next page, after hitting OK to my block edit, we see that the title has changed. The whole title block has changed. So essentially anything you do to a block will change in all the pages, which is neat, right? So let's set this up. We'll go into the top left view, and I'm going to do set view top. Boom. That's a top view. Do the same thing for the bottom left, and we'll set view to front or right. Yes, front, because I want this view to line up with the top view. So we see here the platforms on the right hand side, platforms on the right hand side. So these two should match. We can make sure by selecting this entire thing, doing zoom S to have it take up the whole view. And I don't need it to take up the whole view. In fact, I don't want it to, because I want to be able to have some space to add dimensions on the sides. So with that view active, I am just going to set this to 6 feet. All right, double click out of it. Do the same thing to the top view. All right, 7 feet. Cool. And then do it to the bottom right. We'll set that to right view, which is really the front. Zoom S, set that to 7 feet. Huh. Why does it look smaller in that view? Oh, because I was doing 6 feet, not 7. Double check on this one. 6 feet. So 6 feet for this top view is making it too big. So I'm just gonna switch everything to 7 feet. So it all matches. This one you do want to be precise with because you can't quite eyeball this process. All right, and then I'll just leave that perspective as it is. Cool. Now, I do want to add something to this. This is just elevations, right? So let's say I copied this page, and I want to do 4 view sections. Like I want to cut through this object, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my 3D view, and I'm going to start setting up some section planes. So I'll do section, select, section plane, set clipping plane. That's what it was called. So I want to create a clipping plane. Boom. So first corner of clipping plane, it doesn't really matter. You just want to get a rectangle. And then whatever line this is pointing in, that's where we're cutting through. So I set up this clipping plane somewhere where it's completely cutting through the object. There it is. You'll see, boom. We're cutting through it with a clipping plane. So I'll bring it through halfway. I'll kind of move this out of the way so it's not within the drawing. Cool. So right there, we're cutting through it, creating a plan. I'll copy, paste it, rotate it 90 degrees. Boom. So now we're cutting through it in plan and in section. And I'll copy paste it once more and rotate it on the Z-axis. And this one I do need to move right into the middle of the object and then off to the side over here. So this is like a quarter slice of it, right? So the thing is, we can choose when we don't see these clipping planes. So I can do disable clipping plane, select all these clipping planes, and boom, they're still there, but I see my whole object. Now I go into my 4 view section, and this is where it can get a little tricky. So I do want to have these present in the 3D model. So I'll temporarily just move them right over the object so that I can see them in my layout view. I still don't see it because I don't have it active for my display mode. So I'm going to go over to shaded where I can see them. And here I can. So I can select the flat one here and I can do enable clipping plane. Boom. So it's enabled only for this view here, and then I can set this back to line shaded. Funny enough, I learned all this because I had to for my Rhino certification, which I got just because I was doing an educational program where we were offering it to students. And it seems like I might be involved with that this year again. Not fully sure. The organization has been a little ambiguous, and it's supposed to be starting pretty soon. But yeah, like thanks to that organization and for the push that they did during the pandemic to get certain students certified in Rhino, I went ahead and got my certification just because I was then prepared to help other people get certified. And that's when I learned about all that you could actually do all this stuff in Rhino. And yeah, the less jumping around between softwares that you can do and the more efficiently you can work within one, generally, the more money you'll make on those jobs, right? So let's do this last one. So again, we go to shaded so I can see all my clipping planes. I kind of have to select the one that's facing the view and do enable clipping plane. That was not the right one. So let's undo and select this one. Enable clipping plane. That was the correct one. And then we'll shift that back to our shaded view. And then in the 3D view, maybe I only keep one of these. Or maybe I keep the plan and the section enabled. Let's see. If I enable the plan, that looks pretty neat. Yeah, let's just enable the plan. Let's get like a 3D plan going in there. Cool. All right. I think for the last one, what I want to do is just a rendered view. So let's just set it to rendered. That's not what rendered should look like. Copy of rendered? Maybe, let's see. If I'm in rendered and I start setting materials, will this change? So I go over to materials. Instead of use layer material, I'm just going to do use a new material. And we'll do it's not metal. Oh, plastic. I'll do plastic because it will allow me to add reflectivity, which I do want on it. Color, white, transparency 0, clarity, frosted or polished, more polished. But yeah, since it's white, you wouldn't really see any much of a difference. Let's see if I can make this like an aluminum metal. And we could also do use a new material, import from material library, and then there's this library of materials that are Rhino native. You can always download more materials online. And we'll do metal, polished. Shouldn't be polished, it should just be clean. I guess that would be polished. Polished chrome. Boom. There we go. We got some chrome going on. We got there's a lot of overlapping faces here, which is why it looks so weird. This is my chrome. And this is not my chrome. So I'll hide this one. And then there's another one I need to hide here. Or just move just slightly down or up. So sometimes for these drawings you gotta separate these out. Okay, so I should be reading more like chrome, although it just kind of looks gray, except for this corner here. Because I mean, truly chrome is really just reflecting what's around it. So if everything around it is white, you know, I can select this one and we'll do new material, glass. So it's see-through. My rendered view really should not look like this. So let's go ahead and modify this. We can go to display options with rendered view selected. We get this little window. Background, use render settings. Sure. Ground plane, whatnot. Advanced texture preview. So we'll do shading. Flat shading? No. I mean, I want to take out all the curves for starters. I don't want any curves. I don't want any clipping planes. I don't want any text or annotations. I don't want any of that. I want to use my scene lighting so I get that shadow. And objects, surfaces. Use a single color for all edges. I don't want edges, so I'll set this to 0. Okay. Shadows. I think my shadows are fine. I think it's just maybe everything is just too white. Yeah. This is as good as a live preview in Rhino generally gets for rendered. So I'll go to this plastic. Rather than having pure white, I'll just make it like a light gray. Even though it's meant to be white, just so you could see it. It's just basically invisible. We'll switch this to the plastic as well. And yeah, I mean, the more materials we can throw in here, the better. We could also change our environment. So if I type in environments, right now we have this gray studio environment. If I go add and I go import from environment library, we could actually place this somewhere. So it would be cool if we had, I mean, there's an airport thing here. Maybe this could be in an airport. Incheon Airport. Let's bring in that environment. And we see here in this little window, it's kind of like next to these seats and whatnot for waiting. But I'll go to my display options and set my background to use render setting, use application settings. You know what? I'm just going to restore the defaults of the rendered view. Which, I don't think that's it. But alright. I'm going to uncheck all these so we don't see them. Oh, I got to double click on the environment to activate it. I should still be able to see the environment itself. I mean, yeah, the environment is definitely lighting the object. So we could see like the reflections as I move or as I rotate the environment here is changing the reflections on the object itself. Typically, you would see whatever environment you have as the environment in your viewport. At least that's the case when you go and hit render. rendered in the model view. So if I go to rendered view and I'm looking at it like this, and then I go render, and I wait for that to kick in. There we go. There's our airport environment. It's just not visible in our layout. Obviously this environment is very low quality, but at least it makes this sheet look a bit more decent with some shading on this thing. The glass is like totally see-through, so you can't even see it's there. So I'm gonna go over to material and frost it a little bit. Sometimes, especially in schematic, it's not about what it's gonna actually look like in the end. I'm more concerned with getting something photoreal or more accurate to what the final result's gonna be after design development, which is a phase after schematic, at least in my process. And my process is heavily inspired, or it's a combination really, of a architectural and graphic design process, but I definitely find value in separating schematic and design development. So for schematic, which we're looking at here, it's more about just communicating what this thing is and whether or not it's feasible, how much it's going to cost, what the experience is going to be like. And then after design development, it's like, okay, this is what it is, this is what we're making, this is how much it's going to cost, this is who's going to do it, this is where we're putting it, all that good stuff. I mean, where you're putting it should also be part of your schematic, but you gotta bolt anything in the ground. Okay, so we have a full drawing set here. I typically take some more care into this, so maybe just to wrap this live session up, I'm gonna do dimensions now, just before we export this PDF. As I work on dimensions, if you'd like to drop in any questions in the chat, I'll address those after. So let's put in some dimensions, for example, right here, right? So first off, we want to do these in their own layer. So within sheets, I would generally have these other layers like details, dash, title block. These all came in when I pasted in my title block. They were existing layers I had in the other file. Let's create a new layer, 99 dims. That's my dimensions. I'll throw that within sheets, active layer, these print black. Cool. Now, I'll do the command, or actually let me go over to drafting. So I'll go to the drafting tab here. I'll look for my dimensions. We've got horizontal, vertical, aligned. So I'll do horizontal. And let's just say I want to grab the full width of this thing, right? So I can snap over to this middle portion here, over to the other side, boom. Now I have a dimension and I can drop it in anywhere. So I'll just go ahead and drop it underneath. We're at 37 feet, 8¼ inches. I'll select this, and on my properties on the right hand side, we have the same thing as text. We have this whole style thing, or basically all the graphic options that we have for this dimension. So it's in the style of foot, inch, architectural. Now, if I click here, there's a bunch of other ones: engraving, feet, decimal, furniture, inches, and then if you've created any. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna hit edit, style, and that's gonna bring up this little window. And similar to display modes, I can go to annotation styles. I can select this one that we currently have, and I can just hit new. I thought I could duplicate it, but yeah, so you hit new and then you pick what you're gonna build your new annotation style from. So I'll do it off of the one we have in front of us, foot, inch, architectural. So I'll select that one. And instead of calling it foot, inch, architectural 1, I'll call it just schematic design. It's fine. Okay, so that's the one I want to edit. We'll go into schematic design. Make sure that this is now set to schematic design, so that when I go now to edit style, I can see the changes happening live. So first things first, model space scale is set to 12. If I set it to 1, we see nothing quite. Oh, we have to hit apply. If I set it to 1, nothing quite happens after changing the scale, which is pretty neat. That's kind of what I wanted. We'll go to Arial, Montserrat. The reason I changed it to 1 is just like, basically what I see is what scale it's going to print at, right? Like typically you'd want to change that if there's a scaling thing that you want to do from so there's a difference between adding dimensions in your layout and adding dimensions in your model space. I'm adding dimensions in layout, but I can add dimensions in 3D model space. So the model space scale is essentially the conversion and sizing it's doing from the model space to how those dimensions are going to show up when they're in print or in layout mode. Since I'm just working in layout mode, I'm not concerned with that. I'm just going to set that number to 1, so it's a 1-to-1. What I see in model space is what gets transferred to layout space. But again, I'm already working directly in layout space, so what I see is what I get. So if that needs further explaining, you can ask for that. So font, Montserrat's fine. We can change the height of the text. So right now it's 1/8 of an inch. I can make it 1/4, you know, whatever. Always hit apply to see the changes. So 1/4 is like way too big. Let's keep that where it was. 1/8, 125. Text gap, if you need to increase the spacing. Mask, so this can be useful. If we set it to a solid color and then white, and I hit apply, basically you see that there's a white rectangle behind the number. So that'll hide whatever's behind that dimension, you know, so you can clearly see that number. So you're not intersecting that number with any other lines in the drawing. You could change your margins on the mask to be a little bit tighter. So here they're at about 1/16 of an inch, 0.625. If we do 0.3, it's closer to a 32nd-ish, right? So if I hit apply there, we see now this rectangle is more tightly bound. Let's, I'm gonna zoom into this dimension so you can see a little bit better as I work on this. Cool. Let's keep going. So text alignment, it's aligned to the left. Let's align it center and center. Did I freeze? It seems my Rhino is frozen. Escape? Alright, that was weird. Edit style, center and center. There we go. Fit text, auto, that's fine. Horizontal to view. So if I were doing a vertical dimension, right, the text would be vertical. So instead of how it is right now, it'd be rotated. So horizontal to view would have the dimension always be horizontal as it's shown right now, even though the dimension is taken vertically. So I do want that. I don't want to turn my head or have trouble reading dimensions. It's fine if a vertical dimension has its dimension horizontally. So I'll check that box. Dimensions. A whole bunch of stuff we can tweak in here. It's not necessarily worth going everything. You can kind of tweak on this yourself. Dimension line extension. So that's like the extension right here past where it needs to be. Like if I double that up from 0.1 to 0.2, notice right here, apply, boom, that horizontal one extended. Extension line. So same thing if I put that to 0.2, boom, you see that line extend. Extension line offset, fixed length extension, suppress extensions, you know, all that's fine. Center marks, baseline spacing, center mark style, decimal separator. So for decimals, it puts in a period, all that stuff for dimensions, but that's fine. I like how my dimensions showing up there. I like how my lines are. We can move on to arrows. So here we have ticks, right, which are these corner lines, which are fine. I've used arrows in the past just because the client would typically use arrows, and so I just stayed with their language, but I like to use the ticks. Arrow size. So this changes the arrowhead. In this case, they're ticks. So if I change the arrowhead to 0.5, you'll see if I hit apply, boom, huge, right? We'll keep it to 0.1. And notice that there's kind of like this mock drawing on the top right that's updating live as you do all this. So that's also something you can use as a reference for what it is that you're tweaking here before you hit apply. Leader arrowhead. Let's talk about that. So leaders are cool because if I type in leader, and let's say I wanted to call something out. So for example, this one right here. So that's my leader. I just click there and I'm creating an arrow. I can set this up over here. Then I have to go horizontally. I'll hold shift to make sure it stays horizontal. And then I could keep adding in lines. you know, however complicated I want this arrow to be, but I can just hit enter here, and then I'm prompted to put in whatever text that leader should have. So I'll put entry platform. Platform. Okay, boom, there it is. So if I go to this and it's on schematic design, I can go to edit style. Let me zoom back in so we see what's changing. Cool, so we go edit style. And so our leader arrowhead is this open arrow thing. I don't like that, so I'll change it to this other arrow. Apply, boom, there's our new arrow. And arrow size, right now it's set to 0.1. I'd like it to be bigger. Let's go 0.2. Boom, nice. Keep going, length units, so feet and inches. Linear resolution, so we're only going down to 1/4 of an inch, which is fine. If you needed to be more precise, you could go down up to 1/256th of an inch, but we're staying as precise as 1/4 of an inch, meaning it's rounding to whatever's the closest 1/4 of an inch. Round off, if you wanted to even specify more of a round off. Prefix, so if you wanted to add any text before your dimensions. So for example, if we wanted to say approx before every single dimension, we could do that. It'll say approx. We have to add a space in there. If we wanted to have a suffix, so if instead of having the inch marker, we wanted to actually put inches, we put apply. Boom, IN is now added in there besides the 2 quotation marks. So we can add prefixes and suffixes to all dimensions. Using alternate units if you needed to do that, but I don't. Rarely ever do. Stack height scale. Front stacking, don't know what that is exactly. Let's check it out. If I do 90 versus 70. Oh, I guess it's just like whatever additional scaling needs to happen to that dimension. I don't know. Stack height scale. I suppose okay, so I suppose that happens if you have a number over another, like right here, divided by or 1/4. Then the stack height would modify here with a percentage, which is fine. 90 is okay. Angular units, so we could bring in that as well. So let's go over here, and right here we have an angle dimension. So let's figure out the angle. Let's say I need to figure out, I don't know, this is obviously 90 degrees. Let's say I wanted the angle of this piece right here, which is that that chrome double curve. So I can select that edge, and then I select another edge to compare it to, so that could be this flat edge of cutting off right here. And there we go. Boom, there we go. So there's our angle right there, 36 degrees we've got in there. Let's put that in. Select that as well, so we can go back to edit style. And decimal degrees, that's fine. Angular resolution to the closest degree being 1. If we wanted to round off, we wanted zero suppression, whatnot, all that is right here under angular units. Some more options on leaders. So the curve type for the leader is a polyline, unless you want it to be curved. It could be a spline. So right there, it's nice little curved spline, but I like it to be a polyline. Let's keep it, boom, the corner. Leader text horizontal to view, yes, always have the leader text horizontal to our view as it is right there, and we can have that centered as well. See how that looks, cool. And then tolerance, so tolerance is ultimately like how close is the layout view working or this style concerned with. And here we're going to 1/10, 100th, 1000th, 1/10,000th of resolution. Or even right now to the style, there is no tolerance set. But that's essentially like how close or how nitty gritty are those dimensions reading. But we'll leave it as it is. We'll hit OK. And boom, we've got some dimensions. So I can start using these over here, horizontal dimension, vertical, aligned. So aligned would be anything that's not vertical or horizontal, obviously. So if I wanted to get the diagonal of this right here, see if I could snap. There we go. If If I wanted to get that dimension for whatever reason, that should be horizontal to view. Dimensions, horizontal to view, apply. Boom, there we go. That was a different section I had to click that for. Yeah, we can continue to add in dimensions. So we could, let's see, project. Trying to find a way to snap onto all these edges. So there we go. We have that dimension. We have how much that platform is sticking out. Boom. So we see like that actually came out outside because it didn't fit in there. And typically what I do if I have to modify that, so we select that dimension, and then there's all these control points that show up, right? So I can select this middle control point here and move that around. That middle control point is for the dimension. So if I wanted that dimension to actually sit in here, I can just move the control point and it's moving. So why do we want to do this in layout view? I do this in layout view because it keeps my 3D model clean. And check this out. If I move this platform, even if I do it from the layout view, right? I move this platform out. Boom. Your dimensions update because they're snapping to that geometry. So you can make slight little alterations and modifications and your dimensions are all still good. It will do vertical. And I feel like I've said this like 3 times now today for whatever reason. When you work in 3D, you're working on every drawing at once. So stop using AutoCAD. Stop drawing out each view individually on its own. When you work in 3D, you're working on every drawing at once. So get with it. I know I sound frustrated with that, but it's because I am. Some people are just so hesitant to change. Even if it's gonna help them out in ways that they don't even understand. Okay, anyway, we're done here. I'm just throwing in dimensions for fun. So if I wanted to export this whole thing, I would do print. And we're doing a Rhino PDF, landscape, 11 by 17, resolution is fine. You could do raster output, which means you're going to get pixels in your PDF, or you can do vector output, which means you're going to get text and lines in your PDF, like vector lines. We're going to do print color, because I set print color to black to override the layer colors. View output and scale. So this is where we go here and we select to print the whole layout, and where we select all layouts or multiple layouts, and then you can specify what page numbers. The scale is 1:1, so on paper into the model right now is 1:1. If you want to keep adding margin and positions, if you want to further mess with line types and line widths, all this stuff. I didn't really go over line widths and such because, you know, that's more useful for engineering and architecture. For the stuff that I do, which is typically product, I would consider this a product or an experience or whatever, piece of furniture, a really complex product. I don't concern myself with line weights too much, but you could select a thickness for those lines in the layer properties. So if you wanted certain objects or certain type of lines to show up thicker or thinner than others, all that is set in the layer properties and further controlled at the time of printing right here. So default line width hairline, I'm good with that. You know, you can make it thicker if we needed. I can quickly click through all the pages I'm going to be exporting here, make sure it all looks good. That does not look good. That is green. And I would like that to be black. I can just click black and white in this case because I have no color. But I think what I have to do here for those clipping planes is set the clipping plane to print in black as well, because the object itself wasn't setting that to green, it was the clipping plane. Cool. So we have a little thing like that. I would never, so what I've done in projects before is I export this geometry to Blender because that's just where I like to render. You know, a lot of people are like, well, I want to use a plugin within Rhino to get some good renders straight out of Rhino. I don't want to leave Rhino. That's fine. Blender's free. I have a bunch of templates I've made for myself to render. It's less work for me to export this geometry into its own Rhino file, import that Rhino file to Blender into one of my scenes, and then just click render on a camera view. Then I take that JPEG, paste it into my Rhino file so that it's within this file, and then it comes out with a PDF. So it's a little bit of back and forth there. I know I said like as much time as you can spend in one software the better, but for me, the amount of time I have to wait for V-Ray or Enscape or whatever to like get that right and render it out is more or the same time it takes me to just export this out, put it in one of my Blender templates, and then just drop that render into the sheet in Rhino and export the whole PDF as a set. So that's typically what I'll do here. I'll replace this with a Blender render. But you could also do that. You still have to be doing that with a plugin render. So either way, you can hit print. Cool. We'll do, this is our schematic drawing set. Save. Depending on how complex your model is, depending on what you got going on in your file, this process could take, you know, it's going to take as long as it needs to get all those drawings out. But giving it a second here, see if we can't get that out. And lives, there it is. So here is our PDF. We can kind of keep track. All right, so Rhino says file successfully saved as blah blah blah, the whole directory. Here it is, 10 megabytes. We can double click it and take a look at our PDF, and there it is. We have a PDF sheet laid out from our Rhino model, and it's more visual, right? It's not like fully catted out. It's not fully detailed, but for this stream, I just wanted to get the point across on the workflow for minimum amount of effort to get the maximum amount of output. And, you know, from here, it's all cleaning up, finessing, detailing. You could add hatches. So like, for example, this inner space here for this wall is supposed to be closed in. So I could go to that sheet, which is this one. I can create a layer for hatches. I'm sure I know that there's a way to do this as well for actually having the clipping plane like fill in, but sometimes that can be a little inconsistent in your results. So I like to just draw a rectangle, there it is, or whatever it is that I need to draw with, into right there, and then select that rectangle and use the command hatch. Boom, and that's filled in. Solid. Set that layer to print black or dark gray or whatever it's gonna be. Dark gray is a little nicer. And so if I go to print this sheet, there we go. We've got a hatch, right? That area that's getting cut through is now filled in and not as distracting. So there it is. We've kind of come up with this concept initially with the help of AI. We've rationalized it into a really basic model for proposal. We've had a set of drawings, and what I'd do to sell this idea even further would be to take it into Blender, do some cool renders, put some people in there for scale, add an Apple logo on the side, you know, give it some flair, like some graphics for flair. But yeah, today the goal was to just kind of go over the layout portion for Rhino for the purpose of a schematic view. So I hope you found this useful. If you did, let's go ahead and leave a comment on what you found useful. If you did not find useful or want to see more, need more help in this part of the process, let me know. And if you enjoyed this content, consider subscribing. I stream every Tuesday and Wednesday at 8 p.m. And for next week, I'll be posting on socials what will be coming up for the streams. So thanks for tuning in. As always, have a great evening, stay creating, and I'll catch you on the next one.